Okay, let us begin. So I'm going to start with Julia's, because Kuro, you're a bit spoiled. You've been getting a critique every time. Well, thank you for uh, handing one in every time, though. It's nice of you, but I gotta do Julia's first today. Don't be mad at me. All right, Julia. Okay, let's start. Where do I start? Palettes are good. Let's just start with. Okay, let's start with the dark spots. Okay, so the dark spots here, as you can see in this image, the darkest that this image goes is really just, again, depending on the light spots. See where the darkness of the eye is, the darkness of her hair, which is super dark. And we're establishing sort of like a border for the values. What happens when you choose the darkest tone is you set yourself a border, a limit. And that limit is a guiding point for you. It guides you around the values of the image. So you know when you're going too dark in the cheek area, when you're going too light in a certain area, because it works as a frame for the values. And so if you're doing a study, I recommend jumping straight into the darkest tone because there's no more thinking when you're doing a photo reference. The photo is thinking for you, Julia. The photo is sort of telling you, okay, this is what you need to do. You're imitating me. There's no thinking process anymore. There's no composition or organization of the darks and the values. You're not starting from scratch. You're using a reference. And the reference is what, again, tells you where the dark spots are so that you can just copy them flat out. This is something that you should do. I know I say don't go too dark too soon, but if you're using a reference, go as dark as you need to go in order to imitate the reference properly. Sometimes you don't see values right unless there's an anchor, a dark value anchor somewhere in the image. You're saying, okay, well this is this dark, I'm going to go just a bit lighter to get this certain shade, whatever the shade is, for example. So for here, it's better for you to go as dark as possible, as this allows. And if you do go this dark, you start to notice color, the way the values anchor color and help you view the color a little bit better. So if you have the dark and then you have the purple base tone, you've got this blue border right here, which if you look at it, it's completely blue. It's on the blue section of the color picker. And then we jump into purples, and then we jump back into black. And then we jump into some yellows over here. Well, slight yellows. They are yellows. You have to make them a bit yellow for them to translate as this color. They do read as pink because of the overwash. But this color, this pinky yellow color over here. Then we've got a couple of yellows here. And then we're going back down into purple. So your base tone is going to be purple, which you captured very well. You captured some of the main values over here, but the issue is in the dark spots. It's not reading right now. Good job with the water. Really good job. Okay, so let's jump into it. I'm just going to drop tool right off the painting over here. Finding the darkest spot and imitating it really will complete the image for you. You don't even have to copy the image exactly. You can stylize it a little bit, give her colored eyes, make her nose a little bit more slender. All that stuff that we do as artists. Just to make the image your own. So let's make this a bit darker. Let's choose a dark spot. And once we choose this dark spot, the dark spot of the face, for the rest of the face will become easy to play with. And even when I'm painting, guys, I swear to God, this is stuff I use when I'm painting. When I was painting that caricature I did, I was lost at one point. I was really lost. I was like, what do I do next? Like, I've edged out this face. I've worked out the sketch. I sort of cleaned it up, and something is still wrong with it. And then I zoomed out, and there it was. The dark spots weren't established, and the values were completely off track. They were not making sense. And so when I found the dark spots, everything fell into place because I gave myself an anchor to work with. I sort of grounded my painting process and had a reference point. And after I did that, things became really, really easy. So don't ignore your dark spots. Okay, so look at her. She's got some waterline and tear duct and all of that. So yeah, can't forget that. And then we zoom out, and the one thing that you could do, things that you can take from your reference, is simple lighting stuff. Everything else is up to you, but I recommend taking simple lighting from the reference just to guide you. The reference shouldn't be controlling your image because it's just the reference. It's not a photo study, remember. And so you have to freestyle some of the stuff in there. Let me see. Something. Okay. Right, so I'm just going to throw that blue. So it's a really nice touch. Really gives it that palette variation. And then I'm just going to add those pinks of the cheeks. There's some bright pinks, kind of red. I'm on a color mode layer right now. I'm just going to throw that on the cheeks, on the outer area. And then I'm going to jump into liquify and sort of balance the symmetry of her face. And I do that because we are looking directly from the bottom of her chin upwards. There's no slant unless you really want to invent a slant. But since you're working with a reference, trust your reference. Don't start deviating too far away from your reference, because then you're going to jump into that sort of limbo where you're trying to copy the reference but you're trying to make it your own, and then you get this really sort of messy lighting situation, and you're having lighting from your own imagination clashing with lighting from the image, and it's not good. If you're going to choose a reference, trust your reference and just work with it, and then work with that, and don't mess around too much. So just copy the same angle that this reference is offering you. It's why you chose the reference. Okay, then I'm going to think about basic light spots. The light is shining up into her face. And so where we're getting the light is the surface areas that are facing the light directly. So simple brush strokes. One brush stroke there. These are edges. These can't be blended because they are actual edges that face the light source completely. And you have to sort of trust these edges. It's okay, you can blend them later. The point is blocking in the main parts of this. Some of this I'm going to be inventing from my own mind. Yes, see, she did have a little bit of a chin highlight. Some of this I'm going to be inventing myself, and some I'm going to just trust the reference for me. To do it for me. Then I'm going to block in some basic dark spots. You can just blend it all later. The point is you establish the edge and you establish the tone, and in that tone you're establishing the value. The color tone, you're establishing the value. That's the most important part, is that you have to get the dark spots down, because it's just, without it, it's like painting an image without using grid lines, or painting a photo reference without using grid lines. You're gonna make a mistake. It's gonna happen because you're not using a guiding point. You're not using control. You're not gonna lose control over it if you're just trusting your eye, especially if your eye isn't that trained for detail yet. Okay, so I'm not blending. I'm just trusting it. Gonna lighten up the eyes a little bit. So her eye darks are blue because the person who took this photo sort of added a filter. I think it was like a color filter or something. They just added a filter, and so all the whites are like a bluish tone. That's how you know sort of if they added filters, if the whites are a different color. If they're not like a really yellow natural camera color, then like an untouched camera filter color, then you know that they've added filters. Another thing I'm going to do is add some intrigue to the eye, because this is sort of like an editorial pose where you have some of the upper eyelid visible, so you have a lot of space to get creative with makeup. And I know you're into makeup, so this is a good opportunity to sort of make it work. And then think about the light spots of the face, so what parts of the eyebrows are facing the light, and then what parts of the forehead are facing the light. And if there are any other lights around, you might want to chisel her face out a little bit, give her more of a defined, more feminine bone structure. And I recommend, it's good as a reference for color, but I really recommend changing the color. I mean, for the values, but I really recommend changing the colors. The colors might have inspired you, but they can get really, really messy because you've got reds, blues, and yellows in here. You've got like a touch of everything. And sometimes you just want to get one general wash and then stay away from anything opposing it. So if it can get really messy, and these kinds of filters aren't really that glamorous. They're not really that good looking. They might look good at first, but the more you paint, the more you use color in your art career, the more you're going to notice that having one clean color to govern the entire image is a much better option than having millions and millions of different little colors that you can't really control yet. You can lose control of the colors you're working with really fast, and things can just get really crazy, and if you're 10 hours into the painting, it's going to be hard for you to let go and just erase it all. So it's better to just choose one really good base tone and just make every color sort of branch from that. So what I recommend, since it's a water scene and you want to sort of bring in that cool palette, I recommend just throwing in something like this, so that when you do bring in the reds and everything, they're actually working as reds. If the base wash, the base color is purplish reddish, when you do bring in the blush color, which is the red, it's not really going to do much. But now that we've sort of dumbed down the wash into a blue, when we bring in the pinks, they're a bit more effective. And so her nose and her eyes and her cheeks being pink is going to be a lot more effective, and she looks a lot more alive, which is what we have here. But then you've got this sort of peachy undertone, and it's not really a clean filter. They didn't really clean it out very well. So what I'm going to do now is just blend that stuff I blocked in earlier. Now, it's nice to choose a reference, but your references, sometimes it's good to trust them lighting-wise. The lighting is never wrong in your references. That's how it works in real life. You're capturing a physical miracle of light. So they're never going to be wrong unless someone actually went in and photoshopped it, which you shouldn't be using that kind of reference anyway. But for color, for subject matter, for pose, for anatomy, I mean, anatomy is perfect always in photo references because it's real life, but for props or mise-en-scène or all that kind of stuff, stay away from that kind of reference, or don't be controlled by that kind of reference. You can change the rules, you can switch it around, you can invent your own sort of subject matter, you can add beauty, take away beauty. At that point you're in control. So don't let it control you. So if you want to make her face a little bit more pretty, just get what you wanted from the reference, which is the lighting. Basically all I would have needed from this was the lighting on her face, and then I would have just I just cropped it out and then just let it be, and then freestyle, because again, you're the artist, you're the creative master, so this is where your force comes in. And if you're not enjoying the painting process, where you're actually choosing what's in the image, then you're not really enjoying it at all. And the whole reason why you went into art sort of becomes obsolete. So all I'm doing right now is I'm just sort of trying to find the values of the skin tone. I do want to make her eyebrows a bit more red. They're a bit too dark. Sort of make everything match. And then the corners of the face, I'm just defining basic face structure here, where the skeleton is, and the lighting around it, and how she's up against the water. I'm going to throw some of that color wash on the water, because right now it's too green. And then if you want, bring in a turquoise. If you want the green on a blue wash, it becomes turquoise. So you can just bring in that awfully beautiful color. And then you'll have sort of that green watery look, which sort of covers her body in this way. And so where the water starts is where the where the green turquoise color takes over, and then where her body gets closer up to the surface is where you have the gradual tone between the both colors. And you're sort of outlining here. You're sort of translating this gradient or edge into an outline. Make sure you don't do that. Make sure it's just a clean shade. And if there is sort of like that water texture, which is in this image, some of that water, if you want, can reflect onto her cheeks, and then you'll get even more form revealed because you're breaking the core shadows and revealing other sides of the face. So all I do is get a new layer, use soft brush, brush everything, and then erase away what I don't need. Just like so. That's pretty much my technique. Merge down, and then just highlight it only in the part of the jaw that's facing the water directly. Okay, and then the nose, of course, doesn't get that many shadows because it's facing up against the light, and so what happens is we have to sort of reveal some of the interior of the nostril with just a light shade, a skin tone shade. And then the corners of her lips need to be darkened as well. And just zoom in and then get that yellow tone. Now it doesn't read as yellow on the color wheel, but it is a yellow. Trust me on that. When you brush it in, it'll mix and it'll be that perfect, cool yellow. And brush it in on low opacity because you still want the color to come through. If you're brushing it with high opacity, you're not really doing yourself a favor. You're just going to mess up the color palette. Brush it in with low opacity so it still respects the color wash in the image. Okay, so I didn't blend it, just threw that in there. And now I'm just going to find areas where I won't blend and areas where I will. So I won't blend in this, in the inner part of this soul patch. It's not really a soul patch. I don't know what to call it. The area under the bottom lip. But I will blend the outsides so it can border the sides of the chin. The outsides of the chin. And then over here, again, these highlights are only on the areas that face the light directly. Highlights are always really small areas. You can't have half the image be a highlight. It's just one area, everything else is gradual tone. Okay. And I'm going to bring in some of that highlight on the nose. Of course, can't forget the nose. In the areas of the nose that are catching some light. I'm going to brush a little bit, actually not that area, because there's a dip in the nose here, so that doesn't get any light, but the top part of her nose bridge might get just a touch. And then I'll zoom back out, and it's already starting to come together really nicely. And there's a shadow here, and the shadow cuts off almost instantaneously, because that's where the forehead starts, and it faces up into the light. What I'm going to do is now I'm going to darken the hair because I need to anchor. Again, I'm lost now, and I need to anchor the values back. So I just need to darken the hair a little bit. And then when the hair gets into the water, it sort of turns into this bluish tone. Let me get a more saturated version. And I'm just going to brush it around over here. Show where the hair is in the water and which parts of the hair are near the surface. Now we go back into the face and think about all the parts of the face, the surface areas that are facing the light source. And so when it comes to the eyelids, we've got this set of the eyelids here, which is a bit lighter. And then we've got lower eyelids, which people forget about all the time. They were in the reference as well. But again, you want to paint the bigger eye, the pretty eye, the eye with lots of space on the upper and lower eyelid, nothing too hooded, nothing too small. Now we're just, again, highlights only take up a small portion. Everything else is gradual tone and low scale, low contrast, grayscale. Okay? And then the inner corner of the eye is always lit. And then you had these sort of drowned out eyes. What you can do is you can just make half the, because you still want some eyeball in there. You still want something for people to relate to. Unless it's like a real macabre kind of thing you're going for. But if you do want to make her look dead, but make her sort of alive at the same time, just do half the eye washed out. And the lights of the eyes are facing the light source directly. Just get the sharpen tool. Okay. So the upper part of the eye here, lips, sorry, are catching some light, so just thinking about the faces again. The parts, the surface areas that are facing the light source. I'm going to get my dodge tool. Since her face is wet, she's going to have heightened highlights, which means the contrast goes up if her face is wet. And so where the areas that I do have highlight, they're exaggerated as dots. And then everywhere else you can just throw in a sheen, sort of wetness. Use my brush. Okay, and then zoom out completely and sort of fix up where you have issues. Take it to the reds a little bit, because red has more yellow in it than purple does. So if you want a yellow but you want to stay in the color palette, just move up to like ruby red instead of purple red, and then you get the yellow there. Okay, and then some light on the chin. Light on the cheekbones, and then that clash, which is what happens between two major light sources. One half, of course, has to be primary, the other has to be secondary. You get a clash where the core shadow is interrupted and diffused by the secondary light source. So I put that on a new layer. I'm just going to be smoothing that out. Okay, and I'm going to bring in some of that red. I'm going to go to a color palette and just reestablish those reds in the image. I'm just going to get like a peachy red. Decrease your opacity, color modes can get a bit crazy. And if you want a color for her skin, to match, for her eyes to match sort of the color palette, go for something a little bit cool. That'll sort of bring out the color palette you started with. So now you have the same colors in the reference, but you just haven't copied them in the same messy way that the filter has done it in the reference. And I'm just going to jump into liquefy one more time. Sort of try to make the eyes balanced a little bit. And that eyeliner around the lower eyelid, you might not need it to be that intense. And adding a simple line of water, like a water line here, which is like a sort of pinkish flesh tone border around the eyeball. Might be more effective than using an outline. So just zoom out, erase what you don't need. And water lines get highlight tones on them as well. Okay, so merge that down, sharpen, okay, so now if you sharpen, you get these sort of highlight tones, the more wetness to the face, because that's what happens when the face is wet, high contrast. And you can also add in some details on the hair of the eyebrows. So if you guys know, if you take a shower, you get out the hair of your eyebrows is sort of like dragging down because it's wet, so it gets heavier, and also the water pulls it down. So you can do that to show that she is in the water and her hair is. Anything attached to her, any flyaway objects such as hair, also are part of the general atmosphere. And then if you want, just add in some lashes for glamour. Again, with lashes, you don't need to draw out every single lash. A simple, like, messy texture around the eye reads as eyelashes. You don't need, like, a complete setup. And then her upper eyelids fold, and they're also wet, and they have makeup on, so they're going to get a bit of that highlight texture. What I usually do here is I just get my smudge tool and I just mess around with it. Okay. And then get the sharpen tool because I need that contrast, the wetness of the face. And I just sharpen it extra, not excessively, just enough for it to read as wet makeup. Then zoom out. Of course, you always have to zoom out because that's the checkpoint. That's sort of where you check what you did. And then I just fix it up. And add some eyeshadow just on the outer corners. Just like we do in makeup. Not too much because it can look cheap. It can look like cheap shading, look like artificial shading. And the face, the surface area under the eyebrows gets light as well. So you need that sort of highlight moving across under the eyebrow. Okay, and almost done. Just adding a couple more highlights. And that's using the reference, but you've changed it up. You've made it your own. And that's sort of what I want you to do. I don't want you to be copying the reference completely. I want you to sort of make it something unique, something creative, something different. Shoulders need to be a bit more slender. She's underwater, so it is going to make her hunch a little bit, but seeing as her neck is a bit thin, we want to make it match her body type. At this point, we are keeping the reference bias. The reference is still here. It's just that we're using the reference only to guide us through anatomy and basic lighting. We're not really copying it. It's not a photo study. It's not a photorealism painting. I mean, it's not like it's just an ongoing debate whether or not photorealism is art to begin with, but whatever. It's not really part of the creative, not really using all your creative energy. Let's just say that. Okay, and then the hands, very much easier to do now that you have your reference here with you and you've sort of controlled everything. Okay, dokie. This is the part where the water comes out. Then you've got highlights here, highlights there. And of course, just have to find some edges. Sometimes it's not about blending, sometimes it's about not blending. Right, Anna? Oh, is there some device plugged in close to the computer? There is a very strong sound. Is it gone? Is it gone now? Sorry, was it really bad? Why didn't like a million people message me on it? It was this stupid static. It's like a low frequency hum that comes from my iPod charger. I was thinking, I was hearing it, but I wasn't thinking that other stuff could pick it up. Clearly the mic picked it up. But yeah, that's stupid. Now what I'm going to do, since I made it sort of like a bluish wash, I'm just going to put that wash back in. And if you want to make her look dead, just remove the color from her lips. Really quick tool. If you want to make her alive, put the color back in. Okay, just making sure the reds are only in the areas where we really want them to be. And now I'm going to crop it. I don't need the reference anymore. It's over between us. And I'm just going to find some edges for the hair. Maybe you want to sort of do something like that. I'm going to tuck that in over here. And then blur it out because it's underwater. It shouldn't have that much distinct edge going on. Okay? So we'll look at the before and after. We used the reference only where we needed it, and it wasn't confusing our palette. We chose a color wash that we wanted to stick with. We added the dark spots that we needed, sort of brought the symmetry back to the face, used some of our instincts and visual library to sort of fill in where the face needed to be. And then we got this. Now, this isn't like, all I did was add the dark spots, and then after that everything just snowballed. Because when you add the dark spots, you know where everything should go. You know where the highlights go, you know where the eyelashes go, you know where the eyebrows go, you know how dark the eyebrows should go, you know where the nose dark spots go, you know where the lip dark spots go. Then making the hair go as dark as possible also adds to the control. So that you guys, like, I can't express to you how important the dark spots are on the face. Especially when you're just drawing without a reference. When you're using a reference, it's easy because it's telling you where all these dark spots are, if they're there at all, depending on the kind of lighting, which you should be careful using references. They might be filtered and messed around with. But if you're not working with a reference, it's even more difficult because you guys really need to if you don't have the dark spots, you don't know where to put anything. And you kept the eyes dark and you were just going to keep painting around, I mean not paint it in, and you're going to just keep painting around until you're going to have to find the courage to add in the dark spots of the eyes. Just rip off the bandage, add the dark spots in, and work with it. And it'll come together, I promise you. I did this in front of you. You guys can watch it over and over again on YouTube after I upload it. It's not, unless the sound of that thing was too loud, then I'm not going to be uploading. People on YouTube like to troll, but yeah, it's not that difficult. I did it in front of you. I'm not saying that because I'm a cocky artist. I'm saying that because honestly, the dark spots are your main tools. Okay? Does anybody else have anything else for me to look at before I look at Kuro's? Because Kuro's been getting lots and lots. Anybody? Last time I promised you guys a hair tutorial. I've got 15 minutes left. Anytime, Julia. Anytime. It's been a while since you came here, so you needed that attention. Anybody? Going once? Going twice? Type faster if you're typing. Okay, no more. I'm going to jump into the hair tutorial. Alright. So, a lot of people have been asking me how I paint hair. And how I paint the hair on my paintings. Let me see which ones they were even asked on. Give me a memento. Okay, so I was asked about this hair and this swagalicious lady and this one. Okay, so let's talk about this one. You see, it's just one big section. Okay, well, I choose a base tone here. I'll do it again in front of you guys, but I'm just going to talk you through it first. One big section of hair. I choose what the shape is. So in my head, I have like a gesture line. First, you need gesture lines because hair is flowy. It's flowy, lovey-dovey hair, so it's going to be flowing everywhere. You're going to have to find a common flow movement gesture of wind in the image that unifies all of these flyaway parts. So flyaway parts means clothing, hair, any accessories also fly away with the object that is on the solid object, which is the body. So if I did have another piece of clothing somewhere nearby, I would have had to do it in the same sort of direction. So it would have followed the same gesture line because the wind is following the same gesture line. So everything is carried by the wind, following the same gesture line of the wind. So what I do is, where's my pen tab? Okay, so I find a gesture line, and then I copy that, or I get something. Okay, so then I fill it in. Usually I don't do this with lines, I do this with this kind of brush, or any soft brush, really what I'm feeling at the time. Come on, I can do it. Okay, so I do something like that. Or I just fill it in completely. And then after, let me find it again. I choose a shade, and the shade is sort of depending on where the light source is. So if the light source is coming from over here, shining through the hair, the shade is going to be of this main original object without the extra accessories yet. The shade is going to be somewhere here. And then I usually select the entire thing so that I don't make a mess. And I build the texture, I build the edge, because the hair is sort of a chunk, so I treat it as a 3D object. And the hair has a shadow on it that travels through up until like the edge of the hair here where we have the hairs coming together. And then I choose where the light source is again, so the light source is coming from below, so I shade accordingly. So this is where the lightest area is, and I just make it a gradual tone all the way up until it again reaches the shadow. And then I start messing around with opacity. And then I throw in, so I just shrink the size of my brush, decrease the opacity, and then the hairs start to layer together. And then I get the highlighter color, increase the opacity maybe a little bit, and throw in, and just mess around to see which sort of combination looks good to me. And these, I'm not going to blend them away, these sort of edges I have here, I'm not going to blend them away. I'm just going to be sort of finding a common highlight between all of them and shade against that highlight. So I have this highlight is going to be the middle area where the highlighter is, where the light is coming from. And it's highlighting the hair in this direction, and then everything around that highlight is obviously going to be a gradual movement down. So it's going to be darker. And then some hairs cast shadows, some hairs don't, and then you have to shrink the brush and do some smaller selections of hair. I usually do this on a different layer. And if you want to make it intriguing, add a hair or two that's going against the whatever combination, against the gesture line. So it can be any combination of hair really, because wind can be coming in many different directions, like primary and secondary light source have primary and secondary wind, so you have counteracting gesture lines. So yeah, I do it on a separate layer. I make them meet, and then I erase some of them away. And then I merge down. And that's exactly how I did it with all of these. I sort of find an edge, and then I just work with that edge. So I find an edge, I find a basic shape, so I found the basic shape of the hair, and then I found the highlight, found the shadow, and then I use the opacity of my brush to sort of just break apart the main piece. So it starts off as one piece, I break it into 2 or 3 larger pieces, and those 2 or 3 larger pieces, I choose 2 of them and break them into smaller pieces, and then the brush just keeps shrinking. That's sort of my key. I also did a how to paint hair tutorial. It's old, but it's basically the same sort of process. It's on YouTube, how to paint hair. I just decrease the size of my brush slowly. And because that's how hair is. It starts as one big chunk, and then you break it apart into smaller pieces, and every one of those smaller pieces reacts to the light differently. So sometimes the highlight can be at an angle. So in this case, if I want to add like some sort of angle to the hair, the angle of the highlight moves this way. And sort of that's how the hair, that's sort of the highlight the hair follows. And then you've got objects breaking that highlight because they're casting shadows. So these strokes that are on the highlighted area are just cast shadows from different chunks of hair in the way of the light. So it's the same principles, it's the same physics involved in everything else. And that's pretty much how I do hair. At the very, very end of it all, I get an edge. I sort of make an edge and make the edge really super clean. So this is pretty much what I do. As you can see, the edges are super duper clean on those paintings. And depending really on where how the hair is sitting on the head, I sometimes blend it with the hairline. So you can see here, there isn't really a line where the hair starts. It's just where where she's got flyaway hair, where she's got baby hair, how the hairline works for her. So she's got a bit of a widow's peak. And over here, it's just the flowers are in the way, so that doesn't count. And over here, I also blended it. So I'm just following a sort of hair growth pattern. And so if you're drawing a head, and this is where the hairline is, hair grows this way. And so if you have eyebrows, hair just moves away from the eyebrow. So if you guys just take a close-up, stand in front of a mirror, and see where your eyebrows are, your eyebrow hairs grow this way. And so that's where the side of your hair also grows. That's how the side of your hair also grows. So if you've got eyebrow and eye, you've got hair growing this way, hair growing this way, and hair growing this way. And so when I throw my brushes in, I just throw them in just like this, just following this basic structure, and I'm not moving too far away from the pattern. It's the same thing here. And what I do is I drop tool the color at the base tone of the skin, and that blends in with the hair. Don't forget that important fact. If you want to make the hairline look natural, you have to blend in the tone of the skin, this color right here, with the hair eventually, because our eyes aren't sophisticated enough to determine an exact edge between where the color is and where the other color is. Our eyes just blend everything together. Especially with periphery vision, if you guys look away, it's going to look like one big mess. And if you want to find sort of the edges, not the edges, or like the larger sections of value, what you have to do is actually squint your eyes in order to shut your eyes down a little bit and actually find a distinction, because your eyes are just going to blend everything together. They're not sort of that sophisticated. That's just how the human eye works. So blending the hair in with the skin color is just what naturally happens when we're looking at hair. So you want to imitate that. Okay, and then I just keep blending. And then of course you've got the highlight, which travels around the hair like this. And which I use dodge tool, saves me a buttload of time. And I use burn tool both on midtones, well, burn tool on midtones and dodge tool on highlights. And that's really how I do hair. Just remember it follows a curve. And so you have to do that as well. Just follow that curve. And you've got the smaller hairs that break the highlight. Make sure you're not making everything like even. Like sometimes you just got, like, it's a really random mess. Hair is a random mess. You just have to eyeball it. Make sure you're not repeating the pattern, or for every, 2 strokes you have one in the middle, or something like that, some sort of discernible pattern, because hair is random. So you need to convince the audience of that. I also, at the very end sometimes, just to unify everything, to blend it together, get rid of some of the edges, I just get soft brush, and I sort of blend it everywhere, just to really mute everything down, just like you see in this one. I just got the soft brush and just threw it over. I just didn't want that much contrast. I wanted the contrast to be in the face, and all I did was I just sort of dumbed everything down, and that's sort of exactly how I do hair. At the very end, also, sometimes I just sharpen it. And that's it. That's how I do the hair in these paintings. I'll upload this on YouTube so others can get it as well. I think that's it for today. Thanks everyone for coming. If you guys have any questions, please ask before I leave. Thank you, Abadar, and Boof, and Dirty Paws, Double, Eddie, Jack, Adelia, Jewel, Kuro, Michelle, Sauce, Starkosaurus, the Musico, Trigger Wig, Trigger Pig King, and Veer. Thanks everyone for coming. Do you guys have any questions regarding this mini tutorial? Just make sure you got your good brush, If you guys have a good brush, kind of soft, kind of hard, it's a good combo to do hair in this style. There's many different ways to do hair. Also, don't forget your references. You guys can't do crap without your references. Nobody can do anything without your reference. If it wasn't for reference, I wouldn't be here teaching you. If it wasn't for me observing how the world works, I wouldn't be here teaching you guys anything, because I wouldn't have learned anything. Your references are your backbone. They are the reason why you're drawing. You're trying to copy what's already in the world onto a piece of paper and then make it your own. You're a director of a movie and you want to make your own movie, but you have to use props. You have to use stuff that's already there. So that's basically it. I'm done with my metaphors. Don't forget your references. If you work with studies and copy them, and I did a lot of hair studies, so I sort of picked up that pattern of how hair is curves, and the highlights were on a bend. All of that stuff I picked up from studies. And that's what you guys need to do. You guys need to study. Your students study. That's how they stay students. If you're not still a student, you're not learning, therefore you're not going to be a master one day. Okay? You have to be a student long enough before you become a master, and you have to make enough mistakes before you guys become masters at what you do. Okay? So have a great day wherever you guys are. Have a great evening, morning, and I'll see you guys next Tuesday at 4 to 5, from 4 to 5. Okay? Have a great day. Bye-bye, guys.